On this one, we want to find slope given 2 points, okay? So I'm giving you 2 points and asking you to find the slope. Now, one method would be to graph these 2 points and then use the same method you did on the first worksheet. If you graph the 2 points and draw a line between them, then you could do rise over run. But what if I give you a point that's way off the graph? Okay, then it would become more difficult, right? So we need to have some sort of an algebraic method we can use where I don't have to rely on a graph, okay? So let's look a little bit. If I do graph these points, just to get a visual of what's going on, negative 2, 3 is right here. You agree with that? Negative 5, negative 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Negative 5, negative 2 to be right here. Okay, so I'm looking for the slope of the line that's between those 2 points. Right? So the slope of the line. Okay, so if I find this, you guys know I would have to rise and run. Correct? Yeah. So I would rise 5, is that right? Mm-hmm. And run 3. So I know that the answer is 5/3. So the question is, how can I get this number? How can I get this 5 without graphing this? How could I have gotten a 5 from 3 and negative 2? What's that? If I multiply them, I get negative 6. So look up at the number line. Look at the number line above the board.
2 plus 3.
And look at 3. And then look at negative 2. How far apart are they?
5.
So when you're looking at the number line, 3 and negative 2 are 5 units apart, right? So I can simply, to figure out this number, I call this number right here the change in my y values. So this little triangle here is a Greek letter. It's the Greek letter delta. And in mathematics, they always use it as a shortcut symbol for the change in y. So how much are my y values changing? They're changing by 5. How much are my x values changing? Look at the number line. How far apart are negative 2 and negative 5? They're changing by 3 units, right? So this, we call this the change in x. So slope, when I have a graph, I use rise over run, or vertical over horizontal. But when I have 2 points and no graph, then I use the change in y over the change in x. Okay, change in y over change in x. Now, when I look at this, if I start at 3, and I go to negative 2, am I moving down or up on the number line?
You're moving down.
From 3 to negative 2 would be down 5. So usually when I do this problem, I'd probably put a negative here. But then I'd go to the x's and I say, okay, how do I get from negative 2 to negative 5? Do I go down or do I go up? Look at the number line, negative 2 to negative 5. Do I move left or right? Left is going down. So you have 2 negatives, and 2 negatives is the same as a positive. So any way we do it, we end up with a 5/3. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right, let's try another one. This time, let's give you the point. I don't need my graph paper now because we're going to do it without graph paper. So let's say I have the point, how about, 5, negative 4, and 1, and positive 5. Okay? All right, so I don't want to graph this thing. I simply want to use my formula, which is change in y over change in x. So it does not matter if you start with a negative 4 or if you start with a 5, but you have to be consistent when you go down to do the x's. If you want to start with a negative 4 and go to 5, that's great. When you go to the x's, you got to go 5 to 1. So how far is it from negative 4 to 5?
9.
Okay, 9 up or 9 down?
9 down.
Okay, from up or to the right, if you want to say to the right or to the left. This is to the right, and that means a positive direction. So from negative 4 to 5 is moving to the right 9. Is everybody okay with that? And if you don't see that, look up there at the number line and find negative 4, okay, and then find 5. How do you get from negative 4 to 5? You would count 9 to the right. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, how about going from 5 to 1? Okay, that one's down 4. Okay, so I'm going to go from 5 to 1 means I'm going to go down 4. Is everybody okay with that? Yeah. Okay, so that's going to be a negative 4 because I went down or left. And there's my slope right there. Okay. You could write it without the positive sign and just saying it doesn't matter if the negative's on the top, the bottom, or out front. Your slope is negative 9/4. Is that more steep or more flat? It's more steep than it is flat. Is it uphill or downhill?
Down.
Negative slope means the line's going downhill. Okay? Yes.
What? How do you make that sign exactly that?
This here, it's just a triangle, and it's a little thicker on one side than the other. Okay? But so typically this side over here is just a little bit thicker. It's the Greek letter delta. If you ever go into a college campus or close by, you'll probably see a fraternity or sorority that's got the Greek letter delta, and on the front of their house there'll be you ever heard of Tri Delta? Tri Delta's a sorority, and so their symbol on the front of their house looks like this. It's got 3 of these triangles because there's 3 of them. Tri Delta, 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 delta. Okay, so it is a Greek letter, and for some reason in the history of mathematics, some mathematician decided to use that Greek letter as a substitution shortcut way to write the change in y. It just means the change in your y values. This means the change in your x values. And delta will always mean that in mathematics. Okay, whether you see it on the ACT, in a calculus class, in an Algebra 1 class, it means the change in that value. Okay? It's a lot shorter to write the Greek letter delta than it is to write every time the change in y over the change in x, right? Everybody okay with that? Okay, so let's do another one. Let's say we've got, how about negative 3, comma 8, and negative 3, comma negative 2. Okay? So once again, I'm looking for slope. One of the biggest mistakes people make on these is they get the x's on the top and the y's on the bottom. So you got to be super careful. Remember that the top is the change in y and the bottom is the change in x. So if you want to do the x's first, that's fine. Just make sure you put that number on the bottom. If you want to start here and do the x's first, make sure that number goes on the bottom. Okay, well, how much are you changing if you go from negative 3 to negative 3? That's not any change at all, so we put a change of 0, right? And I probably don't even need to find the top number at this point, but we'll go ahead and do it. From 8 to negative 2. 10 in which direction?
Negative.
Down or left, right? So if you start at 8 and you go to negative 2, that is down 10 units. And if you don't know that, look at the number line and see where 8 is. And then move towards the negative 2. How many spots do you got to move? You got to move 8 spots to get to 0 and 2 more spots to get to negative 2. So 8 and 2 is 10, right?
But is it going to be undefined?
It's going to be undefined because just like, remember, I've been putting these on the quiz for weeks. No, you can never have a 0 in the denominator, so we call that slope an undefined slope. Okay, so undefined, you can abbreviate with a UND.
Hey, you wrote like me.
Okay, everybody okay with that?
Wouldn't it be vertical?
It is. Good point. Hey, Garrett says that's an undefined slope. It's got to be a vertical line. Yes, if you plot those 2 points and draw a line through them, you'd have a vertical line. Okay?
I guess not a problem, but
Yeah, you're only finding slope, right? But just to prove to you, negative 3, 8 would be about here, and negative 3, negative 2 is here. So if you drew a line through them, you would in fact have a vertical line. Okay? Good point. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, how are we on time? Okay, let's do another one. Let's say I have negative 12, comma, negative 3, and then let's say we have a 0 here, and a, oh yeah, somebody go wiggle the mouse for me. Sorry, I didn't realize it went off for you, okay?
It just went on.
Okay, there we go. There are my 2 points. So these 2 points are 2 points on a line, and I want to find the slope of the line that goes through those 2 points. So what's my formula for slope? That's if you have a graph. That's correct. But what do you do if you don't have a graph? Change in y over change in x. How do I find the change in y? Negative 3 to negative 9. Okay, if you look at the number line, you start at negative 3 and you go to negative 9. 6 left or 6 right? 6 left means what? Negative 6, okay? Change in x. You're going from negative 12 to 0. Okay, that would be positive 12 because you're moving from negative 12 to 0, so you're to the right. Now, I'm not done. This will reduce. We always want to reduce. That gives you what? Negative 1/2. Right, yeah, you could divide. There's several ways to reduce it, but dividing by 6 will give you the right answer right off the bat. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the biggest mistakes people make on this, are you listening to me so you don't make it? Okay, one of the biggest mistakes people make, are you listening? Jade, you listening? Okay, people think that you add and subtract on these problems, okay? Do not look at these problems and think, oh, I need to add those numbers together or subtract those numbers. Think about it as you are visualizing that number line that's above the board in your head. And you're asking yourself, how do I get from this number to this number, okay? Everybody gets all caught up in addition and subtraction, and that will throw you off because a lot of times you're subtracting a negative and you forget to change those to a plus, okay? So you got to be careful with that. So just moving left or right on the number line to find the change in y and the change in x. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, so don't forget to reduce. If you get an answer of 0, it means your line's what?
Undefined.
If your slope is 0, your line is what?
Horizontal.
Horizontal. If your slope comes out undefined, it means your line is
Undefined.
vertical. Undefined means vertical. If you get a negative slope, you know that your line's traveling in which direction? Downhill or uphill? Okay, you get a positive slope, you know it's traveling uphill. If the top number is bigger than the bottom number, is it more steep or more flat?
Steep.
Top number's big, it's steep. The bottom number's bigger, you know the line's more flat than it is steep. Okay, so you're ready to work on the next assignment.